This year, we've been examining the epidemic of crime, the surge of overseas scammers robbing Americans online. Well, tonight we kick off a week of new reporting with the focus on the money, the billions being lost, and this new challenge confronting American banks. In tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Jim Axelrod has the story of a 92-year-old woman in Los Angeles who lost her life savings despite her daughter pleading with her bank for help before it was too late.
I'll never forget, there was a message on my phone.
Hello, I'm calling with Charles Schwab with the Financial Crimes Investigations team.
This was 6 months ago. The message for Leslie came from Charles Schwab, where her mother had an investment account.
They just mentioned large transactions and wire transfers, and did I know what was taking place?
And you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Leslie, who asked we only use her first name, was discovering her mother was one of tens of thousands of Americans being scammed by criminals overseas this year. These scammers pretended to be IT experts from the government who told her mom her computer had been hacked and convinced her to take money out of her account to buy gold, which they said was a safer investment.
I didn't talk to my family about it.
Especially insidious, the scammers told Leslie's mom, Ruth, to keep all of this secret.
Well, I wanted to tell them, but I thought that the government would punish me, and I didn't want them to get into trouble, anybody that I told.
Leslie was a trusted contact on Schwab's paperwork, and the firm had her ask her mom about what was going on.
We said, where is the gold? Is it in your apartment? Is it in a safety deposit box? Where is the gold? And she wouldn't tell us.
This is surveillance video showing exactly what happened to the gold. Watch as Ruth walks it outside her retirement home and hands over her life savings to a stranger.
It must be heartbreaking for you to watch that.
Absolutely. Shocking.
One after another, the balances in her mother's accounts began to plummet.
How are you doing today?
So I said, I'm going to film the entire interaction with you and the scammers on my phone.
Okay, let's start all over again, no worries.
Until Leslie convinced Ruth the people on the other end of the line were not there to help.
Now, next, click on next.
And convinced her to fight back.
Every single day, they required her to sit next to her computer, take their calls, and log into whatever accounts they needed.
Leslie told us that she warned Schwab, thinking if they knew what was happening, they'd put an end to it.
I am begging you, lock my mother's account down, please.
But it was too late. Ruth's accounts had been drained. Schwab declined an interview, but disputed Leslie's account, saying the company repeatedly communicated with Leslie, and she did not express concerns after speaking with her mother.
There were so many red flags.
Attorney Anne-Marie Murphy filed the lawsuit on behalf of Ruth, alleging that Schwab's inaction amounted to aid and material contribution to the scammers, which Schwab says is untrue and unfair.
Everybody that has a credit card in this country is familiar with having transactions declined. And the reason that credit cards are so good at doing this is because they're on the hook for fraud. The same isn't true with banks.
With the responsibility comes the consequence if you fail at protecting your clients.
Correct.
Banks invest billions of dollars in trying to catch these guys, but we can't do it alone.
Paul Benda from the American Bankers Association says it's the government's job to help target the scammers, not just the financial industries.
Government has to play a key role in here. So when a bank calls up with a potential scam, we need them to engage quickly and help us make the right decision.
At 92, Ruth, who spent her professional life taking care of others as a nurse, has now lost her life savings.
This should not happen to any decent, law-abiding citizen who's spent their whole life working so that they can save a bit of money for their retirement. And something needs to be done about it.
Schwab wouldn't do an interview, but emphasized it is difficult for a bank to tell a client they can't do what they want to do with their own money. Now, some financial institutions have figured out a way to identify and intercede with potential scam victims. More on that, Nora, tomorrow on CBS Mornings.
So upsetting to see what happened. Jim Axelrod, thank you for the investigation.
Earlier this year, a 92-year-old retired nurse named Ruth became another heartbreaking victim in this epidemic of crime. Ruth's story starts with an email that popped into her computer. Scammers, who posed as government IT experts, told her she'd been hacked, but if she followed instructions, they'd protect her money.
I didn't talk to my family about it.
Not only was Ruth manipulated by scammers, but they told her to keep it secret.
Well, I wanted to tell them, but I thought that the government would punish me. And I didn't want them to get into trouble, anybody that I told.
Okay, let's start all over again, no worries.
The scammers convinced Ruth to take money out of her account to buy gold to keep her assets safe.
They made me buy gold, a lot of gold.
What reason did they give you for you needing to have gold?
They told me that if I bought gold, it's safer than stocks. And I agreed with that.
This is surveillance video showing Ruth walking the gold outside a retirement home and handing it to a stranger for what she thought was safekeeping.
It must be heartbreaking for you to watch that.
Absolutely. Shocking. Shocking that my mother, who's a really smart woman, would do such a thing.
Ruth's daughter, Leslie, was a trusted contact on her mom's account at Charles Schwab, who said she kept calling and pleading with them to step in.
I am begging you, lock my mother's account down. Please, please lock her account down. It is definitely a scam. We are all convinced it is a scam.
Schwab denies these claims, saying it tried to warn Ruth about the fraud risk, but that Ruth was insistent.
Fraud has always been here, but it's just continuing to bubble up.
Jill Gogol is the vice president of fraud services at the Dupaco Community Credit Union in Dubuque, Iowa, where they have an idea how to reduce fraud, targeting their 170,000 members.
More than bubble up now. Now it's just a
Everyday occurrence.
fire hose.
Yeah, some days it feels that way.
10 years ago, Dupaco says they prevented $300,000 in fraud losses. Last year, it was $10 million. Here, every employee from teller to executive gets fraud training annually.
So our first and foremost reason that we do this is because we want to protect our members.
Including how to spot and talk to credit union members whose withdrawal patterns indicate fraud risk.
We really want our tellers to engage with that member to understand what it is they're doing, especially if it's an unusual transaction for them.
And the customer gets a little bit annoyed with the teller. Why are you asking me so many questions? I'm going to another branch.
They're going to call me on the phone and they're going to say, I didn't like this interaction. Something felt off.
Your tellers are empowered to do that.
100%.
Dupaco then alerts local branches to watch out for dissatisfied customers who might also be potential scam victims, and even reach out to a trusted contact on file. Banks here work directly with local police like Corporal Isaiah Huff of the Dubuque PD.
It's a hard pill to swallow for some people.
Corporal Huff can sometimes reach a scam victim in a way family or friends cannot.
Does it happen, though, where just your presence as a detective, just the badge, makes somebody go, ooh?
That carries a lot of weight when I can show up with some supporting evidence that this is not who they say it is.
We think banks are trying their best to protect customers as best they can.
Paul Benda is with the American Bankers Association. He's testified before Congress on financial fraud impacting consumers and says you can't just rely on the banks to prevent it.
They would love to be able to do everything they can to stop them from losing their money. But a lot of times in the end, it's their money.
For Jill Gogol, there is still great value in a financial institution that takes customer security personally.
You're talking about a corporate mindset. It's not resources, it's will.
Correct. And I think sometimes we need to remember that maybe taking 2 extra minutes for one person can be a really big difference maker for that one person and really make sure that they feel safe and secure.
So that 92-year-old victim, Ruth, is now suing Schwab, and she's not alone. New York State Attorney General Letitia James has sued Citibank, claiming it failed to respond to fraudulent activity and implement strong online protections. Citibank has moved to have the suit dismissed. Arguments
in that case, are set for next month.
It's an amazing report, Jim. There's certainly from a marketing and advertising point of view, these institutions, if they make a pitch to customers and say, we're protecting you, there's an opportunity there. But let's talk about the scammers also, and then go wherever you want here. Is anyone trying to catch them, the guy who took the gold bars from a 92-year-old?
So this is, as we say all the time, there is a special place in hell for these people, right?
That's very true.
But it's complicated. A lot of it originates in West Africa, in Ghana, in Nigeria. In fact, CBS News correspondent Deborah Patta, the intrepid Deborah Patta, goes to a boiler room and actually confronts these guys and finds out why they do what they do. She's going to have more on that tonight on the CBS Evening News, and she'll be here tomorrow morning, CBS Mornings, and you can really get a sense of who are these guys.
Pulling the curtain back.
Yeah, exactly. It's stunning reporting.
I love all things Deborah Patta and Jim Axelrod. Thank you so much for being here, Jim.
Thank you.
Tonight, our year-long investigation into online romance scams shifts focus from victim to scammer. We've been sharing heartbreaking stories of people fleeced out of their life savings by scammers who prey on their lonely hearts. So who would do something like this? Well, in tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Deborah Patta takes us on a stunning journey to the West African nation of Ghana, inside the secret rooms where these multi-million-dollar schemes are hatched.
Down a dusty alley in Accra, young men cast off their true identities as they enter this apartment. They call it their hustle kingdom. Meet Ghana's Yahoo boys, online fraudsters who swindle Americans out of millions of dollars by luring them into romance scams.
I go on online dating sites, find a male friend.
Abdullah, not his real name, is part of this syndicate that we filmed undercover. Late into the night, he scours online dating sites, preying on lonely older men over the age of 60, posing as this woman.
I'll go on Instagram, use a girl's picture. I pretended to be a girl, chat with him.
The scammers pretend to be white American women residing in the US, tricking men into falling in love with them. But these are small-time hustlers working for a boss who sets them up with phones, laptops, electricity and internet. And there are hundreds more underground boiler rooms just like this throughout Ghana.
I'm the mastermind behind the whole thing.
That's syndicate boss Voodoo, together with a senior member who calls himself Kola. They've agreed to speak to us on condition we conceal their identities.
I come from a poor family and a poor background.
And in a world connected by the click of a button, they've turned to cyber fraud.
How am I going to survive?
Kola's a university graduate who can't find a job.
I feel disappointed, like I didn't go to school to do this. Sometimes we take money from people, imagine that is my dad. But hey, in our game there's no sympathy. Because once you go on the sympathetic side, you go hungry.
At the very bottom of the syndicate, new recruits learn the tricks of the trade, starting out by trawling the internet for new clients. Once hooked, the closers like Voodoo and Kola step in.
I fish everywhere in the world.
Which areas of the world are easier to catch?
Okay, easy to catch is Americans.
Here he's chatting with a 60-year-old man, posing as Sandra, living in New York, who'll soon be visiting her grandmother in Africa. The man asks what she looks like. Voodoo pulls this image from a porn site. Here's what comes next, the illusion of a budding romance. It begins with sending little tokens of affection, like chocolates or a teddy bear. They message constantly, laying on the attention and flattery. Then it's more expensive gifts to create the perception they are independently wealthy. When a victim insists on a video call, Voodoo hires online porn stars and records them acting out scenarios that he directs, from the mundane to the more raunchy.
They think they're talking to this beautiful blonde woman, yeah. I've paid to just have her on a video call. There's a picture.
If the victim gets suspicious, Voodoo works his magic. Here, he uses the image of one of his porn stars to forge an American passport as proof of identity. For in-person visits, they hire escorts who get a cut of the profits. Building trust can take months.
He do all that to get his attention and the trust. Boom, then we chip in business.
It's time for the big con, getting them to part with huge sums of money. The setup often centers around Ghana's globally renowned gold mines, the largest in Africa. The scammers, still posing as a woman, claim they're in line to inherit one of these mines. The victim is invited to invest in the mine with the promise of huge returns that will secure the happy couple's future together. All sealed with a forged ownership document, complete with an official seal. Yahoo boys and their hustle kingdoms are glamorized in popular West African culture. Voodoo and Kola claim their biggest payout was in the millions.
Every person have money. If you don't have money, the bank can borrow you money.
Do people go into debt then because of you?
Yeah.
They live a flashy lifestyle, expensive clubs, beach parties, fancy cars. We filmed one group celebrating a big payout by just throwing money in the air. But behind the flash and glitz, they style themselves as modern-day Robin Hoods.
Robbing Peter to people, right? But the Pauls in this contest really need help.
So, you lie and cheat for a living. How do I know you're not lying and cheating to me now?
I don't lie and cheat for a living. I'm using what I have here to survive. I decided to be honest to you.
In a country where poverty is rife and jobs are scarce, there's a long line of kids ripe for recruiting into crime. But once they've tasted the good life, they seldom leave, regardless of the cost to victims an ocean away.
And Deborah Pata is here with us. What an investigation and the access that you got to see the other end of this. What about the accountability? Is there any?
Well, not enough, clearly. I mean, the Ghanaian authorities do have an organised crime unit, but they lack resources. And the victims, especially when they're men, seldom report the crime because they're ashamed at what they've done, that they've been conned in the first place. And tomorrow night, we report on exactly one such case, a 75-year-old American who was conned out of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But many of these men are embarrassed to report it. Deborah Pata, thank you so much. Tonight, more of our series on internet romance scams targeting Americans with a look at an elaborate scheme that cost one victim a whopping $700,000. Our year-long investigation took us to 3 continents, including Africa, where scammers working in secret rooms convince victims across the globe to send them their hard-earned money. Here's CBS's Deborah Pata with tonight's Eye on America.
Operating out of underground boiler rooms across Ghana, online criminal syndicates prey on elderly Americans, running sophisticated scams that break hearts and empty bank accounts. They pretend to fall in love in order to steal their victims' life savings. And as this fraudster known as Kola admitted, there are fleeting moments of remorse.
Sometimes we take money from people and feel like, oh my God, how are they going to feel?
But in the end, it's all about survival.
Most young guys, if this game had not come, they have to pull a trigger on people and steal from them.
They may not be putting a gun to people's heads, but the cruelty of this crime is no less devastating, leaving victims emotionally bereft and financially ruined.
Is this fair?
Gerald Pangpari heads up the anti-money laundering unit in Ghana's Organised Crime Office.
We have a lot of unemployed youth, people who are talented, who have gone to school and they don't have anything to do.
What kind of people do they prey on?
Caucasian male, they are elderly people who are quite lonely.
Ghanaian scammers told us they prefer targeting men as they're easier to trap and less likely to report it because of their deep shame. We found one such scam. The victim, a 75-year-old American radiologist we're calling John, not his real name. The syndicate boss, 34-year-old Alfred Kwame Aivo, and the accomplice, a mysterious blonde woman. John declined an interview, but we know he believed he was in love with a woman called Grace Erskine, an Australian living in the US. In fact, he was actually texting with syndicate boss Alfred Aivo, posing as Grace. Aivo controlled the scam, which included the extreme measure of hiring the mysterious blonde woman to play the part of Grace for any in-person meetings John insisted on, as these text messages reveal. Aivo offers to pay her $100,000, but the woman wants more than double that, threatening, "Without me, everyone gets nothing. I could always call and say it was a scam." But she doesn't. And pretending to be Grace, she visited the radiologist in the US, even meeting his family, and claimed she'd inherited a Ghanaian gold mine that John was offered a stake in to secure their future together. These texts show the scammer asking her to meet John in Ghana, insisting it's just 1 week plus TLC. She doesn't seem keen to get physical. Whatever happened, John did travel to Ghana and stayed here at the same hotel as Grace in Accra, while syndicate boss Aivo posed as their driver. And John was so enamored with Grace, he unwittingly paid over $700,000 for a fraudulent investment in a non-existent gold mine. The money was a red flag for Ghanaian detectives, as Aivo was unemployed.
We realized that the person did not have any form of work that is commensurate with the amount of money that were coming into his account.
Aivo was arrested but died of an unknown illness before serving prison time. The mysterious blonde woman posing as Grace had vanished until CBS News tracked her down last week outside Sydney, Australia. Her real name is Rebecca Jade Silk.
Are you sorry? Do you have anything to say to his family?
When confronted, she did not deny or confirm the allegations, keeping her mouth shut and her head down. Silk has not been charged with any crimes. She remains a person of interest for Ghanaian police, but she has a lot to answer for, as Ghana and the US battle a crime that's reached epidemic proportions, with scammers around the world willing to do anything for money. For Eye on America, Deborah Patter, New York.